I suppose I stood somewhat transfixed, unknowing I was about to be transformed. But I get ahead of myself. I am Joseph Holt. It is currently 2022, as I record this, and I have the privilege of being one of 2 Region 2 Arts Council Fellows here in Beltrami County of northern Minnesota. I live in the city of Bemidji. And I'm very much enjoying spending some time representing Region 2 this year. As part of that, I would like to share with you a story that I think illustrates this better than I probably ever could on my own. Now, because I'm a new fellow, I was hired by the Beltrami County Historical Society to write them a song. I am a songwriter. That's what I do. A simple song is what they were asking for, a piece they could make their own and use for multimedia introductions like YouTube and podcasts. You know the type. Kind of like a jingle. Not quite, but very, very similar. But on this wintry day, I stood transfixed by the glorious brick turn-of-the-century train depot made all the more resplendent by its refurbishment. I was soon to learn this jingle would not be my fate. I was to be thrust into a larger, greater story, a human story. A story I think is worth telling if you have the time to hear it. I was about to understand things I had never known, and I'm hoping you will come with me. I think I can say with some confidence that these small county historical museums, have I been somewhat dismissive of them in the past? Maybe. I walked through the door of this one and instantly made myself as at home as if I had lived there my whole life. Now, that's probably just because I love to make an entrance and I'm very, very predictable that way. I know. We all carry our crosses, and living with me in the public sphere happens to be my wife's, so do with that what you will. First thing you see when you walk in are the bars at the threshold, presumably where ticket sellers once slumped into the profundity of their own local powers. I feel echoes of TSA deep within my roots. But now it's a gift shop, manned by a middle-aged fellow in a dapper mask and piercing blue eyes. He now inquired as to why I had invaded his bubble of serenity. A fair question by any standards because, as I said before, I do like to make an entrance. So I promptly explained myself and my mission. It is this. In essence, when I write a narrative or story song, especially when it is bespoke, I do the same sort of research that a novelist might. Not quite so heavily, but the same kind of thing. I read on the topic, I visit locations if possible, I take notes, I shoot videos, I interview people. Sometimes I just sit and take in the local culture just to see if I can glean something by osmosis. And all this time I'm gathering details. Surprisingly often in this process, I will come to tell one story but find another, a better one. So much so that anymore I don't arrive with a story in mind because I find that, no, hear what it has to tell me rather than trying to explain what I have to tell it. Even the act of making this video is part of my process because it forces me to convey the story to you. I must edit the story, codify it, I must congeal it. It clarifies in my own mind what I'm really trying to share with people. Now Bob, now that's not his real name, turns out to be an Iraqi veteran. I begin to ply him with questions and push him very gently here and there just to see a glimpse of what makes him, I suppose. And once we begin to develop what I at least hope is a rapport, I ask him my first and, as it turns out, my best question. Why do you work here? Of all the places, you're here in the dust of the past. What has drawn you? And thus it begins. I will now paraphrase his words. It's calm here, serene, It offers reflection if your soul desires it. And the people are wonderful. I always greet them because I sit out front here. I never let anyone pass without greeting them with my eyes. I sensed a story, obviously, so I pressed him. What kind of people? What are we talking about here? And if I read him right, maybe I didn't, but if I did, I began to see his mind shift from the troubles of the world to the magnificence of existence, I suppose. Well, they come in and stare. They just seem to lose themselves in the stories and pictures on the walls. Sometimes you see old couples come in and hold hands in front of a display, like it's some near-forgotten shared experience they alone stand privy to. They grin and they smile. There's a sad behind the eyes, but a smile on the lips. I don't think they're unhappy, he told me. Just remembering. Then he shared, kind of as an aside, the story of the old man who comes in once in a while to fix the telegraph machine. There is an alcove in the train station where communication equipment is displayed from various times in the depot's history, just right there, feet from the old iron rail. There in the middle of the desk stands a two-part machine, simple and wonderful. The tall part has an old tobacco tin unceremoniously jammed behind it, ostensibly for aligning some component, I suppose. I guess that was how it was done, and that makes some sense because a tobacco tin, everybody had it available. It was pliable, but it would hold the shapes. You could mold it and bend it however you wanted and use it as a tool. I could see the value in that, but had never considered it. He tells me the old man comes in and makes repairs to the unit every now and then because he is one of the last in the country who still knows how. Because he is one of the last in the country who remembers having used it. I later asked the director of the museum, Emily. I asked her about this, and she said, oh, yes. She beamed. We get lots of people through here like that. Some of them used to work here when it was an operational station. Now, I'm not sure why that had never occurred to me, but it hadn't. And I was beginning to come to the realization that the museum's stuff, while wonderful, is really a nexus for a much, much greater tale. After that, I met 3 old women. Friends since college, they tell me. And they wouldn't talk to me until I suggested an interview with all 3 at the same time. Friendly and happy, they offered me another unique and unexpected experiment, well, perspective on the main question. Why? Why are you here? And once they got a rhythm for what I was really asking, I was reminded of the old adage, men like things, women like people. Of course, they pressed me. Sure, that's true, they told me, as long as one doesn't press that further than it really goes. Fair enough. People come to them here at the Historical Society and use their rather vast local knowledge. Now, that's my words, not theirs. I doubt they would toot their own horns quite like that. They make connections of the past with the present. They research, narrate, and inform people who are longing for a past they don't really know they have. They help people plug into a story of our region that is as vast and deep as time itself, recording for us events both significant and mundane, long before we arrived and long after we're gone. They allow people to make connections with roots that dig deep. I guess in a forest of brush that passes for some modern social knowledge. They studiously tend the old trunks that do not fall with each sway of a passing storm. At least that was my very distinct impression. You know, after I talked to them, I was reminded how Bob had started this tale for me. It's calm here, he told me. Centering. And I began to wonder, in a world of tempests the young people struggle to understand, a world of tempests I struggle to understand, do the people of this little Minnesota Historical Society actually hold a key to contending with our world? I actually asked the ladies about that. I asked them specifically about the young. Do the young care? Do the young listen? Does it affect them? Should it affect them? The response was telling. Oh, it will. It will. These ladies are old enough to know what comes next for most of us, and wise enough to preserve it until we realize we need it. Kind of like a mother, I suppose. You know, on the first day of interviews, after Bob shared the story of the old telegraph operator, I wandered the museum for maybe an hour. And when I reached the alcove, for the first time for me, where the old telegraph waited, I felt the floor move. I did. I kid you not. I felt it move. Then the air gurgled and bubbled, and it turned into a rumble. And suddenly, 14,000 pounds of iron and steel blasted its way into my view, only feet from the old station windows. It flew by in all its modern glory of graffiti, power, and violence. As I stood there in front of the old telegraph machine, wow, that was an experience. And I was beginning to get my song. I'll put out other videos as I write this song. I haven't even started yet. But I, at least, found this profound. Thanks.